Hey there, people. I am back with another one of our bonus episodes to celebrate our 8 years of being a podcast. I know, 8 years. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, we are celebrating our 8th year coming up in October 2025. In addition, we are celebrating 500 episodes, 500 of these shows that we have done. And so we are having a big shindig in Minneapolis coming October 16th. And if you are around, we would love for you to join us. Even if you're not around, hop on a plane, grab a car, get here, take a train, hitchhike. I don't care. We want you to come and join us for the celebration of 500 episodes in 8 years. And in addition to just having a celebration, we are having Professor Nick Epley of the University of Chicago, and he's going to be speaking with us on this really momentous celebration that we are going to have. And it's going to be a fun night, so we hope that you can join us with there. If you'd like to join us, you can find information in the show notes down below. So please sign up, come and join us, and we would love to have you join us. But these are bonus episodes, top 8 of the shows. Actually, they're just 8 really great shows. I don't know if we could pick the top 8, but there are some of our favorites, and we hope they're some of your favorites as well. And this one is episode 372, and it's our quest to feel significant and how it affects our behavior. And it is with Professor Arie Kruglanski. This one, for me, just resonated. It hit home because it was this episode that really talked about the motivational power that we have in this quest for significance that we all have. Thought it was really fascinating because it takes this motivational aspect, which we have really dug into a lot, and brings it to a very basic level of human desire, of this need, this underlying need of significance that we all have. And Ari does a fantastic job of talking about that and bringing that home. And so I hope you guys enjoy this as much as Tim and I do. And please enjoy the original episode here and go and use this information to groove this week. Welcome to Behavioral Grooves, the podcast that explores our human condition. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. We talk with researchers and authors and practitioners to unlock the mysteries of our behavior by using a behavioral science lens.
Okay, Mr. Tim Houlihan, why do you think you were motivated to say that last line?
Because that's what we always say at the beginning of the episode, and it's written on this piece of paper in front of me, so I thought I would just go ahead and do that.
Okay. But why do you always say that, or say what's written down in front of you at the beginning of these podcasts? Is it because somebody's paying you to do this?
Right. That's very funny, my friend. You know that we don't get paid. No one's paying me. No one's paying you, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Nobody's paying me.
Yeah. I mean, I do it. We both do this because we love it. We love the idea of talking with people who are brilliant, really brilliant people, and finding out the why we do what we do, and then sharing that information with others, right? I mean, isn't that it?
So is there something in that desire to find out what we do or how we do it, right? And share it with others that maybe brings you a feeling of significance?
Oh yeah. I think it does. Yeah. I feel significant by doing this. I do. I do. I actually feel a sense of significance by doing this podcast. We're 300 and I don't know, many episodes into this. I don't know. How about you? Why do you feel a sense of significance?
Yeah, I mean, similar.
When you do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to you. I think it's fun. It's fun for me. We get to talk to, as you said, really, really brilliant people, and we get to share those conversations with others and lots of others sometimes. And if I'm really true to myself, there's this bit of ego involved, right? It makes me feel important. It's like, I like the fact that people like what we do and think that we are smarter than we actually are because we're talking to these brilliant people, and there's a halo effect, right? So there is this aspect of significance, right?
So bringing it back, so you are motivated to some degree to do this because it feeds your need for significance.
Yes, I think so. I think that's true. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm assuming you learned a bit about that from our guest today. Arie W. Kruglanski is a distinguished university professor at the University of Maryland. He directs a lab that studies human motivation as it affects thinking, feeling, and behavior. And he's one of the leading voices in social psychology, being instrumental in our understanding of the motivation of uncertainty and closure, goals and systems, radicalization, and most recently, his work on the quest for significance.
Yeah, and Arie has over 500 research papers and articles and has won way, way too many awards for us to list out here. Yeah. Just to say this, his work is amazing, and we were very thrilled to have him as a guest.
Yeah. Now, our conversation was really wide-ranging as usual.
Like usual, yeah.
But I do want to say that, like, this quest for significance is something that I think made a big impact on both you and me. So I want our listeners to pay attention to that.
Yeah, pay attention to that. Pay attention to everything, because I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff, a lot of nuances with that. And so listeners, we hope you will enjoy our talk, and that if you do, you post about it on social media or tell a friend. As mentioned at the start, neither Tim or I are making any money of this, but we do love that recognition. So just make our day, make us feel significant, and write out a little social media kind of post around this, and it would go a long way to make us smile.
That was a nice circle back. Well done on that, Kurt.
Okay.
and with that, Groovers, please sit back with a big glass of Quest for Significance and listen to our conversation with Arie Kruglanski. Arie Kruglanski, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are so excited to have you here. This is really an exciting day for us. And we have to know, first thing, do you prefer coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay.
Excellent.
If you had to choose dinner to have dinner with your favorite musician, your favorite actor, or your favorite sports figure, which would you pick?
Musician.
Oh, excellent! You gave that some thought. Does a musician come to mind that you have?
Not very effective. Yes. Any particular musicians? Actually, not.
Okay, great. So the third speed round question, is the dichotomy between motivation and cognition artificial?
I think so. Yes. This is still a speed question, right?
Yes, it is. We'll dig into that later.
It in a few minutes, yes.
Okay. All right.
And the last speed round question, and again, we'll probably want to dig into this one later too, but is intrinsic motivation just focused on the end goals, or is there a fusion of the end and of the goal in that intrinsic motivation?
There's a fusion of the activity and the goal. And the activity is then perceived and experienced as its goal. That was still a speed round question, right?
It was still a speed round question, but I think that was the last one. So,
all right. Okay.
And we will definitely, I think, get into that as we kind of talk through some of the different things. But we are super excited to have you here. As Tim already mentioned, you have had a prolific career, impactful career, focusing on a number of different insights, from motivation and cognition to understanding the underpinnings of goals and goal systems, to extremism and terrorism. And most recently, you're working on quest for significance. In each of these areas, is there an underlying common thread that you see running through all of this work, or do you see each of that as kind of being distinct?
The underlying thread, the most general underlying thread, would be motivation. I believe that motivation is the force that propels behavior. It's not cognition. Cognition, motivation is the dog. Cognition is the tail that the dog is wagging. Motivation affects the way we think, the way we act. Motivation affects our feelings. Emotion is the flip side of motivation. If our motivation is successful, we have a positive emotion. If it's unsuccessful, we have a negative emotion. So it's all driven by motivation. Motivation is the big story. And unfortunately, during the 70s, it was eclipsed by cognition because of the rise of cognitive psychology. I have nothing against cognitive psychology. I love cognitive psychology. But I think it eclipsed the idea of motivation, and the humans were likened to computers that act on algorithms, and the questions of memory, retrieval, and coding took over, forgetting that it's all motivated, that we're doing it for some purpose. Everything that we do is driven by a purpose.
Did you feel a need to sort of right the ship, to bring the story of motivation back to the central part of the psychological research community?
I did. I didn't feel, it's my mission. I hope that it's going to happen. And my research throughout this time was emphasizing the motivation aspect, whether we're talking about, the distinction between motivation and cognition that is in many ways superficial, understanding goals as knowledge systems that are abiding by the same rules as all cognition, but yet they have a specific content that is motivational, whether it be issues of the role of motivation in knowledge formation, the quest for significance, or the need for cognitive closure and issues of uncertainty and how you deal with uncertainty. My latest book, by the way, is on uncertainty, just was published several weeks ago. So motivation was the underlying theme, and it ramified into a variety of different contexts, and it still does. My latest article was on aggression, as motivated by the quest for significance, re-examining the old frustration-aggression hypothesis and showing that aggression is a way, primordial way, very difficult to uproot way of feeling significant. And that's why we see so much aggression in the world, and it's so difficult to eliminate it, because it's a primordial, evolved way of feeling significant. And all the great revolutions and the great fights were for the sake of significance, and they were motivated, and they led to aggression. Anti-colonialist struggle in the 50s and the 60s. I was recently looking at Jean-Paul Sartre's preface to the classic work on colonialism by Frantz Fanon.
Okay.
The title of the book is The Wretched of the Earth. And Jean-Paul Sartre, the humanist, is advocating aggression. Kill them, kill the Europeans, he says. You kill a European, you achieve two goals. You kill your enemy and you become a free man. You attain dignity. So motivation underlies aggression, the quest for significance. And it also, even later paper that is now under review, has to do with romantic love as being all motivated by the quest for significance. You do not fall in love randomly. It's not just a matter of chemistry or magic. You see somebody across the room and you fall in love. No, we identified two aspects of it. The first, what we call the fandom aspect. The person has qualities that you admire, and the person loves you in return, or has a likelihood of loving you in return, and thereby the qualities that this person have are bestowed upon you. So it's a kind of...
I think like children, I think about children, we talk about children acting out when they're young, right? This is this need for significance, that they're wanting to be seen, to be noticed, right? Is this, do you see this connecting to the adulthood, to independence movements and things like that?
Very much so. The child from the earliest times on wants to be appreciated, wants to matter. They want to have the attention of their parents. They want to exhibit their knowledge. I know, this kind of thing. They want to, feel that they are successful and significant. And very often in their own society, the children's society, they attain their significance through bullying and through violent means. They beat each other up. So again, they see violence very often as a way of gaining significance.
So I have a feeling that this whole episode is going to jump around a lot. And this is going to be very fun. This is going to be good.
Excellent.
But with this aspect of this aggression aspect within and the search for significance, does that lend itself then to this idea that maybe marginalized groups, lower economic, lower power status groups would more likely use an aggressive approach because they're lacking in that significance that they're not getting in other aspects of their life? Is that a correlate? Is that a causal component within this, or is that
they will be more susceptible to a narrative that promised them significance through violence?
Okay.
By the way, the economic inequality that is growing in this country and in the Western world in general, the work by the French economist, I'm blocking on his name, Ticotti, I think.
Okay.
A very important book on rising inequalities. Recently, there was a book by two Princeton economists, Case and Deaton. Deaton is a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and they talk about the rising wave of suicide by working-class Americans. Their longevity is really declining because of they basically commit suicide. They kill themselves through the substance abuse and alcohol and all of that. And they say, the economists say, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the loss of dignity. And if the economists tell you that, this is...
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
if the economists tell you that it's not about the money, I mean, what else is there to say?
Well, today
that's a good indication that it probably has some significance there, right? That there's probably something going on. If the economists are saying it's not about the money, let's pay attention to that, right?
That's right.
Today happens to be the 10th anniversary of the founding of Black Lives Matter,
yes,
which is certainly focused on raising awareness and this cry for significance. That
absolutely,
right?
The very word matter. They want, Black people, African Americans want to matter. They do not want their lives to be a free game for aggressive policemen to take away. So I think that idea expresses exactly what it is that they are concerned about. They are concerned about mattering. By the way, not only they, but on the other side of the aisle, Proud Boys. Proud Boys, an entirely different ideology, entirely different, just the diametric opposite, right? They want to be proud. Again, they want to be proud. The MAGA slogan, "Make America Great Again." It's about greatness. You feel you were left behind because of inequality, because of globalization, because of whatever. I'll make you great again. So it's this one motivation that makes us feel good about ourselves when somebody likes us, somebody pays us a compliment, somebody takes us into account. That individual motivation ramifies into social movements that, change the world.
Yeah. You've done a lot of work recently on extremism, on terrorism, yes. A number of those. Obviously, some of this, what we're talking about now, fits into some of that. But can you tell us a little bit about what you found about extremism in particular, and then maybe how that leads into terrorism? I know you've talked about motivational unbalance, where their given need gains dominance and overrides other basic concerns. Maybe expand upon your insights there.
Right. Our mental resources are limited. Our energies, our attention is limited. The more we put it into one basket, the more we take it away from other baskets. So when one concern, and so it's a very interesting dynamic, because if you put everything into one concern, one goal, one motivation, those other concerns pale into insignificance, they fade out. And what happens then is that they stop exercising constraints on what you're going to do to satisfy this one overriding goal. So, for example, a very simple example is one of hunger. When we are hungry, we usually choose what we eat. We want to eat something that is healthy, something that is tasteful, as well as something that satisfies our hunger. But when the hunger becomes the dominant need and all the other considerations fade out, we will eat anything at all, anything that satisfies hunger. We will, eat bark on the trees. We'll eat our pets. We'll eat. Cannibalism has been known to happen under those circumstances. So when when the United States was concerned about security in the aftermath of 9/11, all other considerations went out the window. There was a Patriot Act, there was torture in Abu Ghraib, anything in order to provide security. And all those other things just were not constraining our behavior anymore. So this is something that we and any organism actually is capable of. In the paper that I published on it, even flies, once they're very hungry, they'll eat things that they would not eat otherwise. They will eat bitter and toxic substances. So when one motivation predominates, anything goes. When your quest for significance predominates, and the road to significance is identified in a narrative that tells you you've got to kill other people or you've got to commit suicide for the cause, then you're ready to sacrifice yourself, sacrifice your family, sacrifice your career, and do it just in order to attain significance, because all these other things do not matter anymore. So that's the dynamic, and it's a dynamic that motivates violent extremism of the kind we see. People are willing to risk life and limb for a cause, but also other types of extremism, extreme sports, extreme dieting, love crushes, stalking, when something becomes so important that nothing else matters, addictions of various sorts. So it's very interesting. I think science is at its best when it identifies underlying principles that combine many different phenomena that on the surface seem like very strange bedfellows. What does have stalking to do with suicide bombing? But yet, if we identify the underlying principle of extremism, it allows you to talk in common terms about things that seem to be entirely unrelated.
Well, let's pull back just a bit and think.
Okay.
I'd like to come back to how would you describe a couple of things that are really central to what we wanted to talk about today: motivation and goals. Now they're closely interconnected.
Yes.
But could you just start with a definition?
Well, my understanding of motivation is as follows. All humans have a set of basic needs. And I think I'm not alone in holding that view. Maslow held that view, and there are several, D.C. and Ryan, Susan Fiske, Tori Higgins, they all assume that there is a set of basic needs. These needs are universal. We are hardwired to have those needs. Now, it's very easy to identify the physiological needs like hunger or thirst or the need for sleep or rest. The psychogenic, the psychological needs were more controversial, and people disagreed on what is that set of basic needs. But the idea of basic needs is non-controversial. Everybody agrees on that. These needs are hardwired. They are served by goals that are culturally determined. So, and that's where the variety among, in behavior occurs between cultures, between people, between subcultures within society, because it's all socially constructed. Different societies have different ways of attaining. So, for example, let's take the quest for significance, that to me is one of the basic needs. In some societies, significance is attained by humanitarian needs, by doing good to others, by helping others. In other societies or in other circumstances, the same need is gratified by fighting against alleged enemies, against oppressors, such as the fight against colonialists, and so on and so forth. So from that, it's a pyramid. From that set of basic needs that are universal and that makes us human, the lower levels of the pyramid are socially constructed, context-specific, very flexible. You can exchange one for another. So, for example, if in one of our studies on extremism, We saw how the Tamil Tigers, one of the most vicious terror organizations in the history of terrorism, once they were defeated and put into the radicalization program, they substituted other ways, vocational training, that allowed them to attain their significance in society through constructive works. So whereas the basic needs cannot be replaced, that's you cannot replace your need for food. That's not going to work. But you can replace a means. All those goals that lead to those means can be replaced, and that's basically the cardinal hope of behavior change, of fighting aggression, fighting violence, because violence is not a basic need; it's a means to another, to a basic goal of significance, and that can be changed.
If I understand what you just said correctly, it sounds like there's, in both even the basic needs, but also in those psychological needs, there are a multitude of paths to satisfy them.
Yes.
So again, I could eat just bananas. It might not be healthy for me, but that would satisfy my quest for hunger to a certain degree. It might not be healthy for me. Is that the same thing? Can you have satisfy? And I think that's what you're saying in some of these other aspects, as you talked about the aggression and all right, we can change that aggression pathway to satisfy a need with maybe something better. Is that one of the things that you're talking about?
Yes. What I'm saying, that the basic needs, we are all hardwired with them. We cannot eliminate them. We cannot eliminate people's quest for significance. We cannot eliminate people's need for food and for hydration. That's the way we are. But we can change ways of satisfying those needs. In the same way as you can satisfy your hunger by various ways. You can cook your meal, you can go to a restaurant, order in. You can also satisfy your need for significance by either joining the terrorist or fighting the terrorist. Being a humanitarian or being an artist or a great athlete or just a good person. So these are flexible. And I think that flexibility gives hope that we are not predetermined, we are not predestined by our nature, as Hobbes, would say that we are bad, or other scholars would say, no, we are good. We can be both bad and good, but I think the choice between good and bad is interesting because they are both means to the same goal of mattering and significance, and therefore they can be mutually substitutable, interchangeable.
And all of these desires end up being funneled. They're all motivated. That we have some motivation to achieve each of them.
The needs are motivated. They need to be satisfied, and therefore they motivate behavior aiming at their satisfaction.
Yeah.
They motivate thinking in order to find ways of satisfying them.
So Ayelet Fishbach, who you have co-authored with projects, many projects. She's such a delight, and we are grateful to have had her as a guest. Would she?
I so much agree with that. She was my postdoc, by the way.
Oh, fantastic! She, if I'm representing her idea properly, that motivation and goals happen basically at the same time, that we can't really have a goal without motivation. We can't really have motivation without a goal. Did I summarize that fairly, Arie?
Absolutely. I mean, what I was trying to portray is that this hierarchy, all goals are in the service of these basic needs, and goals in turn are served but yet lower level of means to those goals. So it's a hierarchy, kind of cascading hierarchy. When whatever the goal that you're pursuing now, it ties to one of those basic needs, because those needs basically explain everything that we do. All our goals go back to those basic needs. Sometimes a goal can satisfy more than one basic need, but I think it's all, and in that sense, Ayelet is absolutely right. All goals have, they're serving a need, they're motivated.
Yeah.
And I see it in terms of this hierarchy, this cascading hierarchy, in which the upper level is those needs, both physiological and psychogenic. They're both fundamental, both basic. And then the goals that serves them are culturally determined, are context determined, are occasion determined, and and they're flexible.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit before we got on air, that Tim and I have both done a lot of work with incentives and goals within organizations, application of this. And what I'm hearing from what you're saying, or actually what I'd like to ask you about that is, so when we think about incentives and we think about how setting those incentives up, typically organizations think about cash. But what you're saying is that cash is actually just a means to some other goal, desire, need that they have. And so there may be a way, and correct me if I'm wrong in thinking about this, that there may be a more direct way of incentivizing people to satisfy some of those basic needs if they can be identified. So, as you said, meaning, other aspects of those aspects. If you can build something in that drives that, would that be okay? Am I off base there?
Absolutely. I think that people in organization, people in work settings, they basically are motivated by this quest for mattering and dignity and significance. So I think that's the underlying motivation. Money is, in our materialistic society, is a way of showing how much you're worth. How much you're worth. What is your salary? That shows how important you are. And, a person like Trump never stops boasting how rich he is. He exaggerated his wealth because he feels that makes him a very important person. But there are other ways. Money is not the only thing. My friend and colleague, the anthropologist Scott Atran, talks about sacred values. That people are willing to give up money and Palestinians who fight for their territory. They would not be bought by financial agreements. There was an attempt once the Israelis retreated from the Gaza Strip. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and all the Western countries were pushing lots of money into the Strip in order to afford economic development, and that they thought is going to pacify the Palestinians. But it didn't work at all. They used the money to buy weapons, to arm themselves, to increase the resistance. So I think sacred values are. You talked about different goals have different degree of fusion with the overarching need for significance. And I think, sacred values in a trans scheme are very directly related to significance. People may disagree about how significant money makes you, but people would all agree that, being a great military hero or a great humanitarian, there's no question that makes you a significant person. So there are different ways, different means of incentivizing people, of showing them what is the most direct way to satisfy that what you really want. You did not really want money as such. You want to have the sense of fame, fortune, and you're a successful person, and you deserve people's respect.
Yeah. In the speed round, we asked a question about means end fusion. And that's a lot of some of the work that you've done. And you said, this is a speed round. So I want to offer this opportunity now for us to be able to expand upon this idea of means end fusion. And as I understand it, as it relates to intrinsic motivation, it's that it's not the end goal, that the means itself becomes the goal. Is that?
That's right.
Okay. Can you expand on that and what the implications of that are?
Yes. In psychology, I think there was a confusion about what intrinsic motivation is. And some people, some of my good friends actually, thought that intrinsic motivation means some content of motives, like exploration or curiosity or relatedness. These are intrinsic motives, and there are some external motives, like money or fame. All motivation, by definition, is internal. It's something within you. Whether, you may crave money, but it's still you who are craving it. So it's not external, it's internal. So I think that the proper way, in my understanding of talking about intrinsic motivation, is when the activity itself, the means itself, is at the same time the goal. So, when you eat an ice cream cone, you don't want to accomplish anything other than ice cream cone, right?
You've hit my passion right there is ice cream. So
that's Kurt's love language.
Perfect.
So but to what degree does extrinsic motivation exist?
Extrinsic motivation exists when there is a clear separation between the means and an end. For example, if you work out in order to develop your muscles, maybe you can perceive the working out as a way of losing weight, as one means that among many that leads to that goal. So there is a clear separation. Perhaps you can lose weight by dieting, by exercise, by eating certain kinds of foods. There are several different means, and each means is therefore separate. The more means there are, the more they are separated from the goal, because there are other means to that goal. That's not, there is no unique and the intimate relation between the means and the end, because there are other means to the same end. So, cooking is one way of satisfying your hunger, but it can also go to a restaurant. So satisfying your hunger can be accomplished in many different ways. So in some cases, there is this separation between the means and an end. You know that, you save money in order to buy a car. Buying a car is very separate from saving money. But in other cases, the means gets very fused with the end, and you don't see any other way. You do not see any other way of attaining significance other than becoming a suicide bomber. They tell you, all the other ways do not really, in this particular case, the only way is to become a suicide bomber.
Yeah.
As the coach said, being a suicide bomber isn't everything; it's the only thing.
I shouldn't laugh at that.
No,
I should not laugh at that.
That is very dark.
But so another one of the speed round questions that we asked you about was about the dichotomy between motivation and cognition, and
Right.
Is that artificial? And you've done this is the part that I was introduced to you on, is this element of motivation and cognition and that whole component. And again, for our listeners who might not be familiar with your work, can you talk a little bit about what that dichotomy kind of was perceived to be, and then kind of the work that you've done on that? So
there was a history of this study of the relation between motivation and cognition. In some cases, people juxtapose motivation to cognition, disregarding the fact. So, for example, juxtaposing motivation to reduce cognitive dissonance with the expectation that something will happen. So, expectation is the cognitive aspect. Reducing dissonance is the motivational aspect. But the expectation also is motivated. So that juxtaposition really does not make any sense. Motivation, any goal that we have, is cognitively represented. It can come to mind, it can disappear from mind, it can be activated, it can be forgotten. So motivation can be, you see something very enticing in a store, and that motivation to acquire it, such as an ice cream cone or something of that nature, all of a sudden you want the ice cream cone. A minute ago you didn't. Motivations can override one another. Once your house is on fire, you forget that you needed to go shopping, or right. So your attention is paid to a different motivation at this point. So motivation is a very strong cognitive aspect. It's cognitively represented, activated. It can appear, disappear, be suppressed, be inhibited. And in that sense, motivation has a cognitive dimension that is very important to understand. If you want to manipulate, you want to change people's motivations. But at the same time, the contents of motivation is different. Contents of goals is different from contents of objects, like table. Table is an object that is cognitively represented, but it's not a motivational construct. A table doesn't make you do things, right? Whereas hunger makes you do things, or quest for significance. So motivational concepts like needs, goals, and means have action implications. They affect how you behave, whereas other cognitive objects do not necessarily. So motivation has a cognitive representation, but it's a cognitive representation that has a specific content. And that content is a content that is dynamic. It propels action, propels cognition, and makes us, do things.
Yeah. In some other work that you've done, and I'm going to quote from one of the papers, and I apologize, I don't have the name of the paper right here, but you talk about that attitude, that this liking of an end state is not sufficient to cause behavior. Rather,
right.
That liking must first become a desire, which will only occur if the individual likes a potential future state more than a present state. And that desire must subsequently be transformed into a goal, which will only occur if the desire is perceived as attainable. So what I'm hearing this is that goes in with this cognition piece, right? We have to think about this and different aspects of it, but help me understand that a little bit more if I'm misunderstanding that.
It's again a very interesting history in social psychology. In social psychology, the concept of attitude has been a very important, one of the, if not the most important topic of study, attitudes. And why? Because people assume that attitudes should predict behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, attitudes is just one component. It's not enough. You can like something and do nothing about it because you do not have that other component of expectancy of being able to attain it. It did not form a goal. You may like Mona Lisa painting, but you're not going to do anything about it because you cannot possibly afford it. Or, the Louvre, and the Louvre is not selling it.
Yeah, it's not for sale. Yeah,
it's not for sale. You may like a lot of things, but still that doesn't motivate you. In order to motivate you, two things need to happen. Once, the expectancy that you can attain it has to pass a given threshold. So it has to be attainable. Not only the attitude talks about how something is desirable, you like it. But for this to translate into a goal of wanting it, you need to have some chance of it being attainable. Even the unrequited love in research by my friend Roy Baumeister shows, even those people who profess unrequited love, they still harbor a hope that at some point, somewhere, somehow, the lover will come to their senses and realize how wonderful they are and will reciprocate their affection. So there's always that expectancy. In addition to the liking, so there's a value. Something has to have value. It's desirable, but it has to be attainable. If it's unattainable, then it doesn't become a goal. It's something that you like, but we like good weather, but there's nothing we can do about it, right?
You could move, if you, but that's,
exactly.
It sounds like, and it reminded me when you said this of the movie Dumb and Dumber, when there was the woman talking, I can't remember the main character, and saying, that, you don't have you have one chance in a million, and he goes, so I got a chance, right? And it was, he was like, and he was all excited about, I have a chance,
I should have used that example in the paper. And then, even if you have the value and the expectancy, even if it's desirable and attainable, it has to be the more important goal in the situation, because other goals may, your house is on fire. Even though shopping is desirable and attainable, you're going to abandon it because any more important goal is overriding it. So all of this has to happen before an attitude. That's why we called it the rocky road from attitudes to behavior. Attitudes do not, as such, they have to be translated into goals, and the goal has to be the most dominant goal in the situation in order for it to prompt behavior.
Now, these things also collide in your work on extremism and terrorism and radicalization. You've written extensively about this. And can you tell us a little bit how these particular elements manifest themselves to become so important to someone in the radicalization and terrorism environment?
Right. We have proposed a 3N model of radicalization. The 3 N's are, the first N is the need, the second N is the narrative, and the third N is the network. And when these three components come together, you have this combustible mixture that often results in terrorism, radicalization, violence. Now, the need that we have identified in all cases of radicalization is the quest for significance. It's none other than that. People call it by different names, the perks of paradise, but the perks of paradise in the case of Islamist extremism is not just the paradise per se, in the same sense that it's not money per se in the suicides of white working class Americans. The perks of paradise are in recognition of your great deed, of your heroism, of your martyrdom, that makes you an important person worthy of meeting the prophet and wedding, these wonderfully beautiful women and all of that. So it's not the perks per se, it's what they represent. So the need is the quest for significance, and the quest for significance can be activated through humiliation. People feel that they were disregarded, that they do not matter, or that they were left behind. But that in and of itself is not enough. You need to have a narrative that tells you how to get it, how to get significance, right? And that relates to the component of expectancy that you just mentioned. You have to have the expectancy of being able to attain significance. Otherwise, you may just commit suicide or do something else, withdraw, become depressed, right? You need to have a narrative that tells you, and the violence justifying ideologies, whether it be Islamist ideologies or other or ethno-nationalist or anti-colonial ideology, tell you this is the way to do it, and if you do it, you're going to attain significance.
And these are cultural.
These are
shifts.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The narrative is cultural or subcultural even. It's part and parcel, and this goes to the third element, the network. We are all social beings. A narrative alone is insufficient. It has to be validated by a network of people. We are social beings. We defer and refer to other people. So it has to be something that our network agrees on. And our network is the network that ultimately bestows dignity and significance upon ourselves. So the three elements, the N, the need, the narrative, and the network have to come together. And that's our model of extremism.
So,
by the way,
go ahead.
I'm a member of a NATO panel that looks at radicalization in the militaries of the member nations. And we're employing this model, the 3N model, to understand it. So, yeah.
No, that's great work.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate, I think everybody listening appreciates that. But when you talk about this 3N model, I'm wondering with your work, given today and the interconnected world that we live in with social media and others, I feel that could impact two of those ends, on the narrative, right? And being able to tell what this story is and to have that story be transmuted larger and further and faster, as well as finding that network of like-minded individuals that may not be geographically located near you, but dispersed throughout the world. But now you have a means of being able to connect them. Does that lend itself, did you see that? And two, does that lend itself then to increasing the likelihood of extremism and the radicalization and some of the potential negative effects of this?
You're absolutely right. The technology of the internet and the social media allows people to find a network where they, would not be able to do it heretofore. If they had an extreme view, it would be difficult to find other people with equally extreme view. Now, on the internet, no matter what your views are, you'll find other people. So that kind of really eliminates the issue of geographical distance, geographical proximity, and makes the world very interconnected. And that could and does result in greater recruitment. A major tool of recruitment to far-right militias or Islamist jihadist kind of groups is through internet.
Mm-hmm.
They convey the narrative, they articulate the narrative
They create networks of people. They embrace you, give you significance once you connect with them. So it's a very as a technology, it can do all of that. But I think, as with any technology, it can be used to good purposes and bad purposes. So presumably, we can also create networks that would give people significance through socially constructive means. It's difficult to compete with violence because, as I said before, violence is a very primitive, primordial means of gaining significance. So people are resonated to it in the same way as you and I are resonated to an ice cream cone. It simply lives our lives. Violence has that kind of appeal. So it's very difficult. We did research in Sri Lanka on the dismantling of the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam, this very awesome terror group. And we talked to people who are de-radicalized. So there was one person who worked now as translator, and he was supporting his family. And we asked him, how do you feel now that you are integrated back into the Sri Lankan society? You can support your family. How do you feel? And he said, I feel okay, but I felt better as a warrior.
Wow.
That is kind of primordial. You feel you are a real man, with a big gun on a Humvee. Your hair is blowing in the wind, or your keffiyeh or whatever. You feel you're it.
So I don't want to end this on a negative of here. So
stick with the ice cream.
Stick with the ice cream. Yes, the ice cream I would always stick with ice cream. That's for sure. But is there anything? So what can we do? You talked about this idea that with technology you can also use it to potentially make some more positive narratives and to build maybe positive networks. But are there things that we can do either as individuals or as community or government components as we're moving forward to help in stymieing some of this negative radicalization that's going on?
I think so. I think that, the fact that our goals are flexible and can be substituted for one another, that gives us the flexibility. People talked for times immemorial about the fight of the evil versus good. I think that's true. The evil is a possibility ingrained in our nature to attain our dominance, our significance, our mattering through violent means. But we also can educate people, can educate society to attain our significance through positive means. So I think it's the battle of civilization against brutality. There are setbacks in that road. There are all kinds of things that happen, and violence has its intuitive primordial appeal. But I think the hope is that it can be done. Yes, we can. There is work by Steven Pinker, very important work, on the fact that violence over the millennia has decreased. And that means that there is hope that civilization can overcome. And I think through education, through understanding, through psychological literacy of, us understanding what it is that we're doing, there is a way of changing it, because the psychology of it allows for interchangeability, of substitutability of the good for the bad.
I am so grateful that you just shared that beautiful sense of optimism. We absolutely need that. And we also are curious about your musical interests. And if we were to imagine that Arie has to spend a year on a desert island, actually you get to, let's frame this in a positive way. You have the beautiful gift of being able to spend a year on a desert island, and you get to take two musical artists with you, not the physical people, but their musical catalogs. What two musical artist catalogs would you take with you?
I'd probably bring Johann Sebastian Bach and possibly Miles Davis.
Oh,
Miles Davis.
Fantastic. So you're novelty seeking.
Yes.
In the variety, but big catalogs for both of them, right?
Yes.
Bach
yes. I love both of them. I think both are, doing very profound music. But my musical tastes are very eclectic. I love Latin music. I love salsa music, mambo music, all of that. I love rhythm, and I think both Bach, Davis, and the salsa have rhythm.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Boy, that is absolutely true. There is Bach really made rhythm an important part of music. It wasn't. I shouldn't say it wasn't. Haydn probably had it. Vivaldi certainly had a strong sense of rhythm. But Bach, boy, he brought rhythm right to the forefront, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you like to listen to music when you're working?
I like to, but sometimes it's very distracting. So when I really need to work, I turn it off, unfortunately.
Silence? do you prefer silence in those cases?
I prefer silence, yes, because music is so appealing to me that it draws me away from what needs to be done.
Well, you are just like Tim. Tim can't listen to music when he works either, because he says he gets too drawn into the music that becomes his the higher goal, right? That goal comes listening to the music as opposed to doing the work.
Absolutely, that's exactly
it all of a sudden takes context over there.
That's exactly right.
It's a hierarchy. Music.
I think you've got it.
Arie, this is such a pleasure. We have so enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for being a guest.
Too. It was really a very nice opportunity, and I love talking to you guys. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Before we get started on our grooving session, we wanted to say thanks for listening and wanted to ask you about your motivations for listening to this podcast. Do you like what you learn? Do you like to apply these cool ideas in your work or your home life? Well, we do, and that's why we share it with you.
And that's why we'd like you to share Behavior Grooves with one person this week. Just one person. Share it because you find some joy or interesting ideas in our podcast. Take Nick Epley's advice and share it with a stranger on the bus or a train or standing in line waiting for your double mocha pumpkin spice cappuccino. I don't know.
Wait. I don't even think there is a double mocha pumpkin spice cappuccino.
Oh, you don't know what people want. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that has ordered that once or twice.
That's certainly possible, but it sounds awful to me.
That's true. So there's no accounting for taste, Tim, and you are proof of that. So, but the point is, Groovers, we rely on your help to spread the word of this podcast.
Yeah. So, Groovers, share this episode or share the whole podcast. Either way, we'd really appreciate it.
Welcome to our grooving session, where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Arie, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our motivated brains. I was going to say significant, but we killed that in the intro, and I'm just like, I know we're on a quest for significance. You know we're on a quest for significance, so I'm just sticking with motivated brain.
It's like my new thing. This whole idea of quest for significance is my whole thing.
I talked with clients about, literally we had this conversation a few weeks ago, and all of a sudden I'm in a meeting with some senior leaders, talking about some training that we're doing for this organization that's going through some major transitions. And, they're having these talks about how, they're being bought by a larger company, and there's a lot of uncertainty. They don't know what's going on. They're not sure how many people are going to be retained, what jobs all these people are going to have, what jobs the leaders are going to have. So there's all sorts of, mess going on. And I went into this diatribe about, we're all motivated by this quest for significance. And I went in and I started talking about it. I say that kind of in jest, but the idea of that resonated. It was one of those things where all of a sudden you can see these leaders, they're really bright and, well-intentioned leaders. And they're thinking about how they're trying to create this, they get through this transition phase, the standstill phase between the announcement of the merger and the actual FTC approval of it, and there's limits on what they can talk about and what they can do. And they're going, oh, yes, it's this aspect of, it's a lot of the reason why some of the issues are coming up, because people don't feel significance because they don't know the work that they're doing could just be thrown out as soon as the new company buys them, right? So,
well, we talked about this in the introduction, Kurt, about quest for significance for each of us, how it is at play. But really, I'm kind of serious. What does the quest for significance mean for you? Maybe in your work, in your consulting business, or for the podcast, or in your personal life.
or in your big toe. I don't know, Kurt. What's the quest for significance mean for you? I think it takes on different meanings at different times and in different situations. I think that's the interesting thing. So as the more that I've thought about this, the more that it has been playing in the back of my brain as we are moving forward with this new concept or this new idea, the quest for significance for this podcast, right? There is an element of this that means we're giving something back to people. We're helping educate, get them more information that they can use that maybe will help them improve their lives, improve what they're doing. And that has significance. I think that brings a significance for me. That means that I'm doing something good, and it feeds that ego, as I talked about up in the beginning. And also just the recognition, right? We've been out to conferences, and you're talking to somebody and they're going, oh, you're the behavioral grooves people. And it's like, wow, like God, who would have ever thunk that, man? So
it is cool.
Yeah,
it is cool. And I love that Kruglanski's work is really bringing something that is sort of intuitive, but he's bringing it to light in a really scholarly way. And it makes me think about the parts of my life. I agree, by the way, that we have quest for significance across multiple domains in our lives. But maybe the ones that we care about the most connect to our truest selves.
Oh,
that the idea that the parts that really care about significance are the parts that are the deepest and most meaningful aspects of who we see ourselves to be.
Oh man, Tim, that's a
Kinda
quote.
cool, huh?
That's a quote that I'm putting up. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's an element of this that brings in this idea that underneath it all, underneath all the surface, underneath all the pieces that we put on ourselves that kind of want to make an impression or different things, you peel that all back. And that's really where the significance comes and is making that big motivational push. All right. So we can go on and on and on and on and on and on.
Agreed.
About significance. And I think we probably will even touch on this more, but there was another really interesting piece, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So this was, again, it was like this wham, boom, hit me by the side of the head thing. When Arie talked about it, it was this idea that extrinsic and intrinsic, his concept of how they're not as different, or that it all kind of relates back to being intrinsically motivated. So what are your thoughts on that? First off, I think you have a better grasp of that. I was just so blown away that my mind couldn't wrap my thoughts around it. But what does that mean for you, and what do you think about it?
Well, for a long time, we've sort of agreed as a culture, and the way that the psychological research has looked at extrinsic and intrinsic as being different things. And Kruglanski, kind of recognizes, let's say, commonly agreed upon definitions that the intrinsic motivation is about finding the goal and the means are pretty closely aligned, that they're almost the same thing, if not the same thing. So like an example would be, I take joy in doing the thing itself, not the outcome of the thing. Like a marathon runner might actually take joy just in running, not because of the health benefits or anything like that. It's just the actual running itself. That's the intrinsic. And that's kind of a classic definition that we've agreed on. And the extrinsic definition has always been kind of about, some kind of, seeking something. And Kruglanski twists it just a little bit. I thought he gave it kind of a nice little spin. He talked about the clear separation between the means and the goal, so that they kind of exist separately. And then the big boom, the hit you upside the head for both of us was when he said all motivation by definition is internal, is intrinsic. That
something
basically
within you, yeah.
It's all of it comes from within us. That whatever exists outside that T-shirt that you get at the end of the marathon is just a stimulant. It's just a way of putting a spark into the intrinsic motivation that actually gets us to get up in the morning and go running and finish the 26.2 miles.
Which, again, when we think about this idea of quest for significance, thinking about this in a marathon situation, right? What is that significance that we're striving for? You trained to do a marathon, and you were. Did you ever finish it? I can't remember now. Because you hurt yourself, right? Yeah,
I got injured, right?
Yeah,
in the training.
But the idea of that T-shirt at the end and having that element that says I actually did this, I think goes back to that idea of significance that we talked about.
Yeah.
Because what that T-shirt itself is not going to get anybody to run 26.2 miles. The value of $15 for a T-shirt is not, but the value of the significance that T-shirt instills upon that person who owns it, because now I have bragging rights. I've accomplished this feat that has meaning to me in a different manner, I think is. And so that, I think, is a really interesting piece.
That's a beautiful tie-in, Kurt. I love that, because in that domain, we like the idea of being seen as being the winner. We want, if you're going to run 26.2 miles and compete against 10,000 other runners, you sure as hell want to have something to show for it.
Yeah.
And the T-shirt, which of course you actually paid $55 to get into the damn race to start with. So a $15 T-shirt almost seems like a slap in the face. But you're right. It is that quest for significance. And I think that it does that. It also, I want to actually bend that over into another part of our discussion with Kruglanski. It's domain specific, or it's dominate that. At any given time, our motivation ends up being focused on a particular domain. That becomes the most important goal at a particular time. And training for a marathon is a really important goal for most people. So that in the time that you're training for that goal, you're probably giving up and letting go of and just not worrying about other goals. You're not motivated to pursue a lot of other things. You still have work and family and relationships and things like that. But my perception is that when we are pursuing a major goal, like a marathon or a major presentation, or pursuing some aspect of our career, or courting someone, for them to be our partner, those things start to dominate and our quest for significance becomes more closely aligned with those domains at any given time.
Right. So as Kruglanski said, he said, and again, this comes from a lot of his work on radicalization, and many of those people who become so enamored with this one aspect of their world and making their impact, their significance now becomes this whole radical kind of component that they're being bent on. And that lends itself into kind of dismissing all of these other aspects of their lives. And this idea that, as he said, one motivation, those other concerns pale into significance. They fade out. And what happens then is that they stop exercising constraints on what you're going to do to satisfy this one overriding goal. And I thought that was really interesting. Not that our listeners are radicals and doing that, but it's a really interesting way of thinking about those extremists and in our world. But also, even just if we take it into our own life, when we have that one kind of key thing that we are striving for, that promotion that I'm really working for, that marathon that I'm practicing to run for, all of those, it kind of narrows our focus. It doesn't kind of narrow our focus. It does narrow our focus. Yeah. And that lends itself to maybe doing things around that, limit our element of others. I might, forget about my family and not pay as much attention to them in my striving to get the promotion. I might not go out with my friends. Those overriding things. But then the other part of this that I loved is that at any moment I'm getting hungry, right? I'm going to have this other motivation. I have to sleep. There's that motivation to sleep. There are things that then become more dominant in there. But again, you go, wow, that's why some of those people that are really striving for things, they go without sleep. They don't eat well. They're just doing all sorts of things that in the big picture of things may seem negative, but it's because they're being driven by this overarching quest that they're on. So,
agreed. I also loved how he talked about motivation as the force that propels behavior. And he said that, motivation is the dog and cognition is the tail, and that the dog is wagging. And I love that, this idea that motivation and cognition are separate, but the big part of the story is motivation. And then he went on to say that emotion is the flip side of motivation. Emotion is the flip side of motivation. And of course, they have the same Latin root. Those two words, motivation and emotion, have the same Latin root, movere, which basically means to move. And so when we talk about motivation, we're almost always talking about emotion. And I kind of love that he sort of, brought that to light in a really cool way.
Yeah. And I love this idea that cognition in and of itself isn't enough to make us move to that point, right? It isn't the driver of the behavior. I may think about going out and exercising, but until I have the motivation to do it, right? I know it's good for me. I know I should be going to the gym every day. I know I should, not eat that bowl of ice cream that I'm eating, but I don't have the motivation that's strong enough to actually make that happen. And that is, again, one of those ideas that just I can wrap my head around and think about it for hours and hours and hours. So
Robert Sapolsky even made a comment as a biological neuroscientist. He said that before our brains are aware of a threat to our well-being, our body starts acting on it. So before we have that cognition, that the cognition is secondary to the actual experience, that our bodies start going, wait a minute, there's a threat.
Yeah.
And so
I hear that there's some noise in the brush, and I'm all of a sudden, my body is reacting before I realize that it's a lion, right?
Yeah,
my pulse rate increases, my focus narrows, all of those biological components. And
before you have cognition.
Yeah. All right. We could spend the next 3 hours talking about this conversation. We probably will after we actually end this, but we won't put our listeners through that pain of having to listen to us just go on and on and on about this. All right.
I'm looking forward to the next 3 hours. Let me just say that. And we could do that, and we will do that, because Arie has a huge body of work that we just absolutely find some of the most fascinating stuff that we've come in. And next time he's a guest, we're going to have to talk to him about radicalization.
Yeah, definitely going to have to talk more about radicalization and what that is. So I'm in for that. But for now, Groovers, we just hope you find these insights on motivation helpful this week as you go out and find your groove.